It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Now look, baseball trading cards have been going on. I mean, if you think about this, from the 1950s through 1981, Topps had a monopoly on
They were
this
the only
entire
game
thing.
in town.
But the period we're talking about is really from the 80s to the early 90s. Baseball cards kind of took a life of their own. And when I was given an experience share when we were in our content meeting, I was like, yeah, my middle school basketball coach opened up a trading card business that would only be open after school.
It was like his side hustle.
I don't know if this, I guess it was a side hustle before we called him that, but it's also kind of a little bit of a conflict of interest, is that he had a captive audience that he was out
come
there.
into my store.
Hey guys, after basketball practice, let's go to the card shop and we'd figure this thing out. And it is one of those things, because think about the magical ingredients that happened in the 80s and 90s that really drove this frenzy. Was that you had Topps, which was the only creator, had a monopoly on making trading cards on baseball and so forth. And then all of a sudden you had Fleer.
Yep.
And then you had Upper Deck. You had
Russ.
you had other providers coming on the scene, and we're starting to flood the market with more and more cards. But we're all still nostalgic on Topps having the monopoly, and the fact that we think, no, that Frank Thomas card or that Deion Sanders card that I have, that's going to just, if it's valuable here, it's going to be valuable there with this other manufacturer and provider. Not necessarily the case. And then don't forget, we had Beckett, the baseball card monthly. You guys, we take so much for granted having the internet now, because you used to go to like your local drugstore, your local gas station, wherever they would have magazine rack. And you would look for this month's
Beckett
update
monthly,
of the pricing of your baseball cards, so you could figure out what you're going to trade with your buddies and figure it out. This thing really turned into a frenzy, and you saw something that used to be worth pennies turn into hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. We all thought we were going to be rich off of our baseball cards.
I remember as a young person in the 90s, I actually had and I had no concept for like money and what money was, but I remember actually looking at the Beckett monthly to try to see what my cards were worth. And I would check it on almost like a monthly basis. And I get so excited if like my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card went from being worth $3.90 to $4.05. And I would get so incredibly excited about that happening. And that was completely crazy. I should have had no ability or no reason to be able to value what my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card was actually worth.
Yeah, I mean, this thing, it turned into a frenzy for all the wrong reasons, I think. And it's like I said, we had a lot of players, manufacturers, now creating cards to where what one card is worth is different just by a different manufacturer. And we actually have proof of that.
Yeah, this one I thought was really, really interesting. If you look at the 2009 Mike Trout rookie card, we have one version of it that actually commands a current present-day value of $400,000. And another Mike Trout rookie card that costs or is worth about $3.25. What I think is remarkable is whenever you tell someone, hey, I've got a Mike Trout rookie card, you have no way of knowing, unless you see the actual card, which one of these are. And so as a purchaser, someone says, hey, Brian, I got a deal for you. I'm going to sell you a Mike Trout rookie card. Unless you actually know the market and know what you're getting, the prices are not incredibly rational. It doesn't always make sense what these are worth.
Well, it ties into the value is only as good as the community or the provider of it. And you see that with a lot of current stuff we'll be talking about a little later. So be very careful that you are actually buying into the one that holds the value, because it could be a slippery slope on figuring this out. And then you also have to understand the fundamentals of, look, I still think it's interesting and it's very full circle. And the fact that we went from one provider, Topps, to 4 providers, and then we're back down to one provider. And I think that there's a big learning experience there, is that you can flood the market and have too much of a good thing. And we've seen that with the number of cards that they were making in the early 90s.
In 1991, 80 billion baseball cards were produced. If you look at the entire United States population at that time, that's 320 baseball cards for every single person in the United States. So again, if you're trying to hold on to something that's going to have value and be super special 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, there are a lot of them out there. So really knowing that you have a valuable one might not be quite as easy as going to the local grocery store, buying a pack of cards, and all of a sudden think that I have, oh, there's my retirement account just sitting there in my hand.
Well, it's back to the whole concept of scarcity.
Yep.
Anything that's made in the tune of 80 billion is not very scarce. And I think that at the end of the day is what really drove that what was perceived as scarce through the Beckett, periodical that was coming out with the values and other things. It was really a house of cards.
Yep.
Wasn't worth what we thought it was, and a lot of people got left holding the bag on it. I would challenge you to look at what you have in your house right now, because I'm also looking. Not only it shows that I fall into all these trends. My Star Wars collection. Now look, if you come to a tour of our studio and our office, you'll see I have some awesome Star Wars figurines from my childhood that I have on display, and that makes them actually priceless to me. But there's quite a few other, figurines that I have, like Greedo and so forth, that probably should have sold them when they were worth
There was
a
a
lot
time to sell
more,
them.
because what I perceived as value that would stay forever is it's very temporary. So if you have something, and I'm looking at all of you guys with your Pokemon cards.
Yep.
This feels very similar to my baseball card collection with what's going on with Pokemon, because they're always creating more Pokemon cards. Now I know that's not the first series or whatever are supposedly worth so much, and I could ask Reby to come over here and tell us the right terminology of the most powerful or most valuable cards. But I would just say be very careful that value could be fleeting on something that has only perceived scarcity versus actual scarcity.
Yeah, the two other fundamentals that I kind of took from thinking about trading cards and what we've seen there and what we still see there is that fundamentals matter, right? Like we just showed you the fundamentals behind what makes one card valuable is different from the fundamentals that make another card not valuable. That's no different when it comes to investing in anything. If you want to go buy a rental property, just because you go buy a rental property doesn't mean that it's going to be a successful endeavor for you. You have to understand all of the variables that go into it that make it valuable. It's not a one-for-one fungible thing. So when it comes to investing, a lot of times it's not quite all that easy. And then the other thing is that over a long enough time period, supply and demand generally tend to normalize. They do tend to kind of even things out. And so you really need to be aware of that, especially if you're trying to buy something that is perceived as unique or perceived as scarce.